Father, Son, and Violin. A personal life story tells the vivid of Mao's China. Daniel Olson Chen. Dedicated to my parents and all of their generation.
Special acknowledgements.
My special thanks to Ms. Mercedes Larbenz. Without her encouragement and inspiration, hard work in editing, artwork and her publishing assistance, this book would never have been made public. Father, Son, and Violin. Chapter 25, Farewell My Father. 1. A special family reunion meal. Family reunion meal is when all family members sit together around a table to have a meal. It's an important event for Chinese families, normally happening on the eve of Chinese New Year. But it wasn't a New Year's Eve on which our family had such a reunion meal, for our father could certainly not last until the next New Year's Eve. Even though we made a huge effort to put everyone in the family together, still it wasn't as perfect as we wanted, since father was too weak to sit by the table and therefore could only lean back on a sofa. Mother had an empty seat and a set of chopsticks on the table for father. Next to father's empty seat was another empty seat, which was for my younger brother Danhan. That is to say, Danhan was also absent from the table. However, Danhan's ex-wife was present. As they had a deal, the divorce was only on paper. In reality, they still lived together as a family. To borrow this opportunity, I really would like to say a few good words about my little sister-in-law, the youngest, the prettiest, the smallest, yet the biggest money maker in the family. Since the education reform had been carried out, her income was several times higher than that of my brother, given that she was working in the education field. In addition, she founded a private art school together with her partner. That meant extra cash. In China, parents compete with each other. Their private art school was never lacking in little customers. What is the emancipation of women? Women's emancipation is the emancipation of economic strength. Therefore, naturally, the financially stronger wife became increasingly more powerful in the family. My little brother, he wasn't little at all, not anymore, could not bear the shame as the man of the house. He decided to fight with the wife, economically. He swore he wouldn't be her husband until he made more or about half the same. That was what the divorce was all about. Putting it in other words, love had never been a problem between them. The problem was only one thing only, that was money, the part of the money that the wife made too much of. To express her emotion, mother picked up a huge piece of fat pork with chopsticks, intentionally leaning in younger brother's wife direction. This is an old Chinese style. Using one's own chopsticks to pick up food and give to another person was a way to show respect to the person, though Westerners might find it disgusting. When the young wife saw that piece of fat oily pork, she was disgusted and almost spit it out. At this moment, the young wife's mobile phone rang. She immediately passed the phone to their daughter, saying,
"Tell your father, starting from today, we will lock the door at 12 o'clock midnight."
The daughter started to chat with her father and forgot all about 12 o'clock thing. The wife was about to grab the phone back, but her daughter refused, handing the phone over to me instead, saying,
"My father is asking Uncle Danjie to answer the phone."
What? Me?
What a surprise, I confirmed.
Your father really said for the Uncle Danjio, not the eldest, to answer the phone?
The wife again asked her daughter to pass the phone back to her, but the daughter wasn't joking. She passed the phone over to me. As I wrote throughout the whole book, my younger brother and I had broken diplomatic relations. Domestic relations may be more appropriate, since our childhood. Though recently, with effort, There were some signs of repair, yet not quite at a level of uncle, therefore it was unthinkable that he wanted to talk to me directly. I took the courage and trembled a bit to receive the phone, busy thinking what nice words I should say.
Hey, is that Dan Henao?
But he cut all the shit, hit direct to the bush.
The Hunan Orchestra invited you to have a violin solo concert. They asked me to inform you.
Such a joke was too sudden, too much for me. I certainly didn't believe him. Dan Hen didn't bother to explain, but handed the phone to conductor Xiao. He was by then the head of the Hunan Orchestra. Hearing Zhao's voice after so many years, I started to believe it was true. After I showed my appreciation, I told him the truth, that I had quit violin performance several years ago, therefore wasn't able to take the solo role. Xiao encouraged me.
Quit? How could you? A man's value is the persistent pursuit of his goal. Of course, being able to achieve the goal is another matter.
Those wonderful words from the mouth of conductor Xiao were particularly inspiring. Recalling when I was a middle school student, how he made his comments about me.
Too many rhythm problems and too strong amateur habits, difficult to transform into a professional musician.
And how did I write back to him?
I swear to you I will to be the #1 violinist in Changsha. One day I will become a professional violin soloist. Become the king of music. You will lead your orchestra, chasing after me with my rhythm, as my accompaniment.
Thinking of that, I couldn't help laughing. As the saying goes, a man's revenge, even after 10 years it wouldn't be too late. I waited for this moment for so many years, and finally I see the day I win the battle. Shouldn't I be satisfied and proud of myself? However, now wasn't then. Time had gone by, nearly 3 decades. I was by then, after all, no longer a naive middle school kid. I, after many years in the West, had become a gentleman, or more precisely, close to a gentleman. It would be a waste if I don't seize that opportunity to show my gentleman's quality. After I once again tried to refuse the concert, Xiao suddenly said some words rather difficult to understand. He said,
No need to put off again. Even if you don't think of your own interest, you should think of the orchestra colleagues' interest. You have business and should favor your old friends.
Business? What business?
I quickly asked Xiao to hand the phone back to my brother Dan Hen. Dan Hen avoided answering my questions. He only said,
It's not easy to explain on the phone. Let's talk about it when we meet next time.
His wife seized the phone shouting.
The door will be locked at 12 o'clock.
Cough, the phone was cut off. Seeing me in a state of extreme confusion, Dan Hen's wife revealed the truth of my recital. The truth was, Father gave the money I gave him for medical treatment to Dan Hen as the manager, to buy Hunan Orchestra's accompaniment for me in a recital. I thought it was my violin performing ability that conquered conductor Xiao. What a sentimental and romantic fantasy.
Oh no, how can I spend money to buy a concert? In addition, I haven't practiced violin for years and I no longer have the ability to stand on the stage to give a solo concert.
I said. The young wife didn't agree, she said.
What age it is now? The world has changed and now money is level with ability. Look at those performing artists on TV. How many are really there because of their artistic talent and ability? Nowadays, people pay for their own concert, pay for publishing their own books, pay for their own names. If other people can, why can't you, my brother Danju?
Other people can, but your brother. I cannot, because I'm not other people.
I tried to explain to my sister-in-law. Dan Hen's wife made a, knowing nothing about good or bad, you took people's good intentions to be bad, expression, took her daughter and said,
It's getting late, let's go home to lock the door.
2, I decided to take the recital concert. After the family reunion meal, I recalled the whole history of my violin life, from the first time I saw the violin at Brother Lee's window, making my first violin under the instruction and help from Master Zhou, at middle school age going to the pond to practice violin in the early morning and by the side of the railway track practicing violin in the evening, when working at the construction company, hiding somewhere using a mute to practice violin during work break time, when working at the Hunan Beijing Opera I practiced violin like crazy, every morning, even earlier than those martial arts actors. Even that year I was sent to work in a rural area on behalf of the government, with a dirty muddied face and empty stomach. I still did not stop practicing violin. When studying at the Shanghai Conservatory of Music, at the beginning, even though I had no place to stay and wandered the whole night on the streets, I did not give up practicing violin. It is for the violin I trekked through dozens of countries, going halfway around the world. I had done all the hard work, day after day for decades, all so that one day I could stand on a big stage concert hall, accompanied by a big orchestra with flowers and applause from the audience, camera flashes, the television cameras pointing at me. To give a solo concert, which I thought was a very distant dream, suddenly fell from the sky in front of my eyes. That temptation was almost irresistible. Although I had psychologically changed my social position and accepted the fact that I had become a professional violin maker, a craftsman instead of a performing artist. Although violin making is also a serious creative art, almost good enough to find peace of mind and satisfaction in vanity, but I was after all a violinist. Yes, I want to play violin, just give me a reason, even a small reason. If no reason, then I only need an excuse. However, to give a concert, not because of my violin performing level and ability but money, that would be an insult to an artist. Oh no, absolutely not. It was not that I cared so much about the money, maybe a little bit, or maybe a little more than a little bit, but not sleeping well the whole night, I turned back and forth unable to figure out why Father suddenly changed his attitude, buying me an orchestra to give my solo concert. With a mind full of doubt, I went to see Father early the next morning.
Do you think I can die in peace with my eyes closed if I don't see your brilliancy on the stage?
No matter what Father really meant, it sounded to me that it was no more than sarcasm.
What do you really want from me?
I almost begged.
All right, all right.
Father waved his dry bones.
I just want to seriously listen to my son play the violin. Just count it as the last wish of my life. Would this be too much to ask, or wouldn't you do it for your father?
With Father saying things like that, what else could I say? However, to recall the history, I realized that Father, against his will, gave up his dignity, and even put aside his faith in communism and communist principles. Buying me a concert was just his way of saying sorry or showing me he was my father before anything. But at that time, I was so naive, thinking Father really wanted to listen to my violin playing, or I'd rather believe that was the truth. Meanwhile, a nurse asked me to go to Premier Lu's office. I went there and found a doctor was waiting for me instead of Premier Lu. Seeing me, the doctor said,
"About your father, we have done all that we could, but the reality is cruel."
Please, just tell me how much time left.
I asked bluntly.
"Say, a week, no more than 10 days.
The doctor answered. I thanked the doctor, ran out of the hospital and immediately made a call to Dan Hen, asking him to tell conductor Xiao that I accepted the concert and the sooner the better. I took a taxi rushing to Danson's home, took out my white violin, the violin I made when I was small, that Father smashed into pieces during the Cultural Revolution and later I brought to the U.S. course to repair. I was so glad I brought it back this time, felt like it was all destined. Then I went out again to buy some tools. As quickly as possible, I had to have the violin of great historical significance, adjusted to performing condition. That feeling was just like a warrior preparing his weapon for the battlefield. The violin was soon ready, but my violin playing ability had been lost for years, Not just my fingers, but also many violin works that I could no longer remember in full. To look for the music scores, there was no time. Even if some scores could be found, I wouldn't have time to practice. With such a difficult situation, Conductor Xiao came up with a brilliant idea.
You don't need to remember the whole concerto, just play whatever you remember from all the concertos you've played before. The part you remember must be the part you like the most. I will put them together and call it the best of classical violin concertos.
Teacher Xiao, you've got to be joking. Please be serious.
I said what I thought. But Xiao said,
Do you see me not serious? Do you see me laughing? What the market needs is what we do. Nowadays, one can do whatever one wants and likes, and we have new labels called Innovative School, Avant-Garde.
Conductor Xiao was getting more and more excited. He sighed and said sadly,
It's not that I'm not serious, it's that now we can't afford to only play serious classical music, for economic reasons.
As the result of discussion between Xiao and me, I listed all parts of violin concertos that I could remember, including Bach, Mozart, Beethoven, Bruch, Tchaikovsky, Wieniawski, Sibelius and others. Xiao linked all the parts of the different works by the different composers together, forming a new violin concerto, and euphemistically called it the best of the world's classical violin concertos.
Well, let's settle it this way.
Xiao hastily looked at his watch and said,
Sorry, I have other business to negotiate. Today I can't accompany you for a meal. When the scores are ready, I will ask someone to pass them to your brother. Your solo part is your responsibility. When you practice, do pay attention to the rhythm. The orchestra only has one rehearsal for you before the concert.
How come only one rehearsal?
I was rather surprised.
Your brother Dan Hen has only paid that price.
Conductor Xiao spoke as he opened his Jetta car door. I had not yet fully awoke from that dialogue by the time the emissions from Zhao's car had dissolved as part of the city. By this time my aunt was already back at her workplace in our hometown Xinhua. I immediately called her, asking her to be present at my big event. 3. Dramatic tragedy at the concert hall. After 3 days of hard practice with a metronome, the big day had come. At the concert hall, I took a look at all the orchestra members. I found quite a few old colleagues, but also new members I didn't know. I went to greet my old colleagues one by one. Yet I was disappointed to not see the person I wanted to see the most, my boyhood friend Dugua. After asking, I learned that he was a violin professor teaching at a conservatory in the neighboring province. Rehearsal started. Though Conductor Xiao did his best not to make things perfect, he still couldn't change his serious nature. He asked the orchestra to repeat some places over again and again, until some of the younger members started to grumble.
You said we only do once and pass. Why do it over and over again, like it's a real thing?
The 2-hour rehearsal was soon over. The musicians all went backstage for a break. Left on the stage were only Xiao and I. I went to shake hands with him and express my gratitude. Xiao, with a helpless smile, said,
After so many years, you still have not radically improved your rhythm problem.
I laughed with pain and replied,
But you have improved a great deal in following soloist skills.
Hearing that, Conductor Xiao, with a bitter smile, that smile was uglier than crying, said,
Yes, no matter how capable I am, I have to follow God. Customers are our gods, therefore I have to follow customers. Today you are our customer, our God, so I must follow you.
It seemed except for those sad topics, we had no other encouraging things to talk about, therefore we were both about to go backstage and take a break. At exactly that moment the full stage lighting came on. 2 television cameras were shooting at me. That atmosphere suddenly made me feel like a star. A female reporter holding a microphone came up to me and interviewed.
Mr. Daniel Chen, or should I call you Chen Danju, after more than 30 years, when you come back to your hometown Changsha, what is your biggest feeling?
I blurted out with the Changsha dialect.
My biggest feeling back home is, I'm a foreigner.
The lady reporter smiled.
Juji,
9 brother in Changsha dialect.
you have the same accent after so many years, rare, not easy.
But immediately she switched back to working status, asking me,
Why do you feel like a foreigner? Can you explain?
Because great changes have taken place, both in my hometown and myself, especially my hometown.
Not waiting until I finished my sentence, the TV director shouted.
Cut.
The lights on stage switched off at once. Then I realized it wasn't a real interview but just a lighting and sound test. I adjusted my eyesight for the sudden change, looked toward the audience, vaguely seeing my former violin teacher Guo in a wheelchair. The man pushing the wheelchair should be her son. I remembered her son was a genius violinist. That was also why she gave up the position as the concertmaster of the Hunan Orchestra and became a full-time violin teacher, so she would have more time for teaching him. Why had so many years passed with nothing being heard about her son? Another thing that had always puzzled me was, if I was no more than her student, not even a good one, why did she take me so seriously, helping me and pushing me so hard to be a good violinist? That question must be answered, not now but in the end. I gave my teacher a slight bow and walked toward backstage to take a break. But just as I walked by the side stage, I was surrounded by some old friends chatting. I socialized with them but my eyes were busy searching the audience downstage again, imagining another wheelchair, a wheelchair with my father in it, or him being carried by my younger brother Danhan. Meanwhile, an incredible scene appeared before me, as I saw my father not coming by wheelchair nor being carried, but walking in on his own feet. I couldn't be wrong, as right beside my father my aunt. Immediately I left all my friends and was running down the stage toward my father, but was stopped by the stage manager, saying,
Now the audience is already be let in, therefore no one is supposed to leave the stage.
In the meantime, on the street outside, my brother Danson was holding a big TV set and squeezed into a taxi. The always gentle Danson, that day uncharacteristically, kept pushing the taxi driver.
Faster, more quickly.
Please don't push me. Driving a car is like that. The faster you want, the slower you get.
The driver looked back at my brother when the taxi was just approaching an intersection. Seeing the yellow light, the driver floored the accelerator, rushing out a few meters just as a small motorcycle crossed directly in front of the car. The driver slammed on the brake, followed by a crashing sound from behind. The taxi's ass was kissed by the car behind.
Do you know how to drive a car? How could you make such a sudden stop?
The driver of the BMW behind examined the damage to his car as he cursed.
You talking crazy.
It was you who hit me. How could you ask me if I know how to drive a car?
The taxi driver also checked the back of his car to see how badly it was damaged. But the taxi driver, seeing the car was a BMW, figured the driver must be somebody, therefore he dared not be too aggressive. In only a short moment, the two crashed cars were surrounded by a crowd of curious spectators. BMW eats fart. BMW eats fart. The people were all gloating. Danson took a look at the meter showing 18 renminbi and 50 cents, immediately gave the taxi driver 20 renminbi and said,
Keep the change.
He opened the taxi door, paying no attention to his big swollen head, and carried the TV set through the crowd and got into another taxi. This time, he asked the driver,
Don't hurry, take your time. The faster you want, the slower you will get.
But how do you think the driver responded? He said to Danson,
My brother, I cannot afford to drive slowly. Time is money, money is life. You pay me by kilometer, not by time. Am I right?
Okay, eyes front, don't look back. Just drive safely as you can.
Danson asked the driver. Finally, Danson reached the hospital. He carried the heavy TV set, climbing up to the first floor, second floor. He needed a rest, but tried to get to the third floor. Really unable to hold it longer, he put the TV on his leg, resting it against the wall for just a second to let his hands, one by one, have a short break. Then he went on to the fourth floor. As soon as he got to the fourth floor, he ran into a nurse with a medicine cart. Danson said, borrow, in words, but actually he seized the cart and put the TV set on it. Regardless of the nurse's objections, he pushed the TV heading to father's room. As soon as he got into the room, Danson put the TV on a chair, plugged it in, installed a temporary antenna, and adjusted the channel, finally finding the channel broadcasting our live performance at the concert hall. Danson excitedly clapped his hands, about to call father to get up, when the nurse called an on-duty doctor to come and blame Danson, saying that taking her cart was a barbaric action. Danson had no time to talk to them. He tried to get father up. But father gave no response. Danson patted father, and once again with more force. The doctor realized something was wrong. He looked at father and found all medical equipment connected to father was off of him. The doctor checked father's pulse and eyelids. With a sympathetic expression, he looked at Danson, and then covered father's head with a blanket.
Doctor, he robbed my cart.
The nurse insisted.
Get out!
Danson roared. The doctor immediately covered the nurse's mouth and got her out of the ward.
My cart.
That nurse was still watching the TV on the small cart.
Go get another one.
The doctor's voice and the body of the nurse both disappeared out of father's room. Danson removed the blanket from father's face and held father's body, leaning against him, facing the TV. Premier Lou and the emergency service group arrived at father's room. The rescue routine was performed. At the hall, the concert was about to begin. Meanwhile, I was in a dressing room backstage, doing a final check of my glorious image, got some saliva to sculpt the few remaining hairs on my forehead, stood up and walked to the door. I went out the door and stood by the side of the stage, ready to give the concert. The concert finally began. I stood in front of the stage, back to the orchestra. This was the moment I wanted and fought for all my life. Conductor Xiao was very serious, and the orchestra too, not at all the same as during the rehearsal. The concert went very smooth. At the same time, in the hospital, my father was given an electric shock. It was purely a formality, but unexpectedly, my father gave a deep sigh and came back. It was such a great joy to Danson. He turned up the volume to the highest level and held my father, sitting up, facing the TV. Everyone in the room stopped what they were doing, in astonishment or for other reasons not important enough to explain. My father opened his eyes, looking at the TV. When my violin sound came out of the TV, he smiled a smile of satisfaction, and everything, smiled, for the last time in his life. All of this lasted only a few minutes. My father left us, left the world, terminating his life journey. Pangaea was backstage too, keeping contact with Danson. When the first piece of music finished, I received huge applause, including from Teacher Guo. I was in an excellent mood, bowing once, twice, 3 times and then leaving the stage. As soon as I returned backstage, waiting for my next piece, Pangaea rushed to me.
Baba,
Pangaea's next words were interrupted by heavy breathing.
What happened to Baba?
I guess 90% sure my guess was right.
Don't tell him now.
Dan Hen shouted to Pangaea running toward us. It's too late. I banged the door of the dressing room with my fist. Suddenly, my heart was being pressed by the weight of a huge rock and I could hardly breathe. Though I was well prepared for my father's death, when the moment actually arrived, that feeling was difficult to accurately describe in words. I think anyone who has lost a loved one would know this feeling from their own experience. However, I had another feeling that I'm sure not everyone has the opportunity to experience. I was just about to play a violin solo on stage, the moment I had dreamed of for several decades. After all of the hard work and effort, I could finally show my magnificence in front of people and above all, to make my father proud of me and admit his defeat in front of me. But at this very key moment, father suddenly left me. Making me feel like a warrior whose opponent is dead, he would find all the weapons in his hands no longer making sense for him, neither the martial arts training nor hard practice since childhood had its use. It's like in a war, with no enemy aircraft, anti-aircraft will become a pile of scrap metal, or if there were no viruses attacking a computer, antivirus software would become a pile of useless data occupying hard drive space. To think of it deeper, if a samurai lost his rival, he could even doubt the value of his own continued existence.
It's showtime again. Come quickly to the stage.
Someone knocked at the door of my room. I woke up from the immersion of my contemplation and another question emerged. Now I have no father, to whom do I play violin for?
Everybody is waiting for you. Come out quickly, please.
The stage manager called me again. Even though father no longer existed, I still had hundreds in an audience waiting for me. Yet even thousands or billions could not compare with one person, my father. However, even though I could ignore the audience, I couldn't let down my musician colleagues on the stage waiting for me halfway into the concert. My mind was busy with my own affairs while my legs were involuntarily out of the dressing room. The stage manager saw me with a strange look and asked,
"Hey, I say, Mr. Chen, where's your violin?"
I realized I forgot my violin. With a bitter smile, I went back to my room to fetch the violin. When I came out again, the stage manager saw my red eyes and encouraged me.
"Relax, you did well. Everything will be all right."
Seeing I looked as if I were going to fall to pieces, the stage manager held me and led me towards the stage and said again,
"Relax, relax, you'll be all right."
Then he pushed me to the stage. I went to the center of the stage again. Conductor Xiao nodded to me and then raised his baton. When he waved his hand, about to start the orchestra, I raised my right hand to signal him to stop. Xiao looked at me with great confusion and embarrassment. I slowly lifted the violin, along with memories from my childhood, the tune from Big Brother Lee's Window, to children's songs, Little Frogs, Iris, Only Work is the Most Glorious, and father's favorite, Lee Song, to my brother's most favorite songs, The Evening of Moscow Countryside, and Troika. I went on and on up to the Beijing operas, Go Mountain to Beat the Tiger, and finally, the song, Home, Home Sweet Home. Conductor Xiao was completely bewildered and didn't know what to do. But the concertmaster led the orchestra, following me. Xiao realized that was the only way, so he gave a wink to the orchestra members, meaning for everyone to follow me closely. That situation was acting out the letter I wrote to Xiao when I was a kid, saying,
I swear to you that someday I will become the #1 violinist in all of Changsha City. By then you will say I am a professional. When I play the solo in my style, you will have to lead your orchestra crawling and rolling to follow my rhythm.
In that way, my music went on for probably half an hour. Throughout, Father's image constantly looming in front of me. I finally reached the limits of control, suddenly stopping. I held my violin with both hands, my face firmly affixed to the back of my violin, for a long, long pause. Since the very first time I touched a violin, every day I dreamed of the moment I would stand on the stage. It was this dream that gave me unlimited power to overcome all obstacles, conquer all difficulties step by step, climbing to this point. Today, however, when this moment really came, I suddenly felt it was exceptionally dull. Maybe like mountain climbing. During the climb, one has high spirits and feels full of confidence, but when they reach the top they look around only to find oneself surrounded by other, higher mountains, and what had been climbed was no more than a small slope. Or like crossing a desert, in a state of desperation, dying and suffering, then accidentally stumbling upon a lush green oasis. With the yearning to survive, one struggles to jump into the oasis only to find that under the beautiful green is an everglade that one cannot escape. There could be many other reasons to feel apathetic when finally reaching a goal. However, I knew clearly why I felt that way when I at last took the stage.
My father passed away! Comrades and friends, my father passed away!
I shouted out, even shouting hysterically to the public, to the point of drooling, was still not enough to vent the burning feeling in my heart. Suddenly, completely out of control, I raised my violin over my head, and then, I fainted. My violin was released from my hand, dropped on the stage, just as my father had done to her during the Cultural Revolution. My violin, tennis, tennis, cried the final moan. The entire concert hall, both musicians and audience were in a commotion. Soon I came to, sitting on the stage for a few seconds, a few more seconds. With help from the stage manager and conductor Xiao, I stood up again. I was about to leave the stage, but after just a half step I stopped. Quickly I adjusted my mood, turned toward the audience.
Please forgive me. I'm sorry.
I crouched down and picked up my broken violin, piece by piece very carefully, trying incredibly hard to use the time to calm myself down. Using a more moderate tone, again I addressed the audience.
We don't have chances to get together like this. In the future, probably no such chance ever again.
I paused for a moment and suddenly, increasing my volume.
Please allow me to take this opportunity to express my gratitude. I would first like to thank the schools and work units which I have been a part of, the Changsha Xinxian Kindergarten, the Changsha Datong Elementary School, the Changsha New River Elementary School, the Changsha No. 4 Middle School, the Changsha Construction Company, the Hunan Beijing Opera, the Hunan Radio and Television Orchestra, and the Hunan University of Science and Technology, the Changsha Railway Institute, the Beijing Broadcasting Institute of Hunan Correspondence Center, and of course, the most important, the Shanghai Conservatory of Music, as well as the Shanghai Academy of Drama. I want to thank those who taught me, trained me in my life journey, especially my teachers, such as Li Xingtao, my enlightened teacher who took the political risk, teaching me how to play the violin secretly in a church. Without him, I could never have taken the violin path in the first place. My teacher Yu Boping, the former concertmaster of Hunan Beijing Opera, who changed me from an amateur violin player to a professional. My teacher Gui Shuming, who not only gave me a strict basic violin education, but also built for me a bridge from Hunan to Shanghai. My professor Sheng Zhonghua and Yulina of the Shanghai Conservatory of Music, who gave me academic education and linked me to the outside world. My professor Boy Hansen of the Norwegian Academy of Music, who polished me as a piece of rough material into a mature violin performing artist, and many more I need to mention as my masters and teachers in the violin making field. The last but not the least, I certainly want to thank my friends, Ma Xiaomao and Wang Shi, my school classmates and friends. It was they who stimulated and encouraged me get into the violin world. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank everyone in my family. My aunt, thank you for giving all the love during my childhood. Donya, my very first wife from Shanghai, without her selfless unconditional love and financial support, it was not likely I could have completed my studies in Shanghai. Mariana, my family in Norway, it would have been impossible for me to change citizenship and become a free man of the world without her and all the Western re-education I received from her. I especially want to thank my brother Dansin and his wife Panjia for all the things they have done for me over many years, of course, including a tolerance to noise. In short, I want to thank everyone who gave me help growing up. Finally, and most importantly, I greatly appreciate my father for his making my dream come true today. Decades of fighting with my father, and today I finally understand everything which was hidden deep in that battle. It is my father's deep love. To put this love into sublimation, we perhaps come to this conclusion: love my father, we should love my father's whole generation. In order to achieve an ideology, our predecessors created this period in history, created the history of the People's Republic of China. From liberation to land reform, the Great Leap Forward, the Cultural Revolution, reform and open door to the present Chinese characterized socialist society. No nation and no period in the history of the world has experienced as many social changes and rich life experiences in such a short period of time as our generation. From this sense, aren't we the most fortunate generation in human history?
As my speech went on without knowing the time, about half an hour had passed. Conductor Xiao gently knocked the baton on the sheet music table, pointing to his watch. I knew he was trying to tell me, the 2-hour concert only has 1 hour left. I nodded and smiled to tell Xiao that I understood. I cleared my voice and said,
"Finally, I would like to thank Conductor Xiao and every colleague in the orchestra."
I stepped back and was about to leave the stage, but a very strong idea burst into my mind. I shouted with excitement.
"One more thing to announce, my comrades and friends, which is, I am here to publicly propose to a woman who is present in the hall."
Hearing this, the audience made a huge noise of surprise, curiosity, shock and anger, or perhaps impatience.
"Yes, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends, I have a marriage proposal to announce. The woman I'm going to marry is the little lady selling my music CDs and books at the concert hall in trance."
As soon as I finished my announcement, the television lights went off. I saw a cameraman carrying the machine along with the hostess, running towards the concert hall entrance. Other people followed to see what was going to happen. Obviously, they all went to see Mimi. I looked at my watch.
"Now there are 45 minutes left for the concert, my friends, let's dance."
I put my violin's remaining pieces carefully on the lap of the concertmaster and took his violin, played a Strauss waltz, a wave of conductor Zhao's baton, and the orchestra colleagues immediately followed. The audience, one by one, stepped out to dance, turning the concert hall into a ballroom. I passed the violin back to the concertmaster. Holding my violin remains, I went directly from the stage down to the audience. I took a flower from a flower basket and squeezed towards the entrance. Then several kind people shouted, "Please give way to the groom." Mimi, at this time, was taking a rest at the concert hall entrance, for she was a little tired after selling my books and CDs before the concert. Seeing a crowd of people suddenly rushing toward her, she had absolutely no idea what was going on. The TV director ordered his crew,
"Be ready, lights on, action."
The TV reporter asked Mimi,
"Are you the one Mr. Chen is going to marry? If yes, could I ask a few questions?"
Then, the TV hostess pointed the microphone to Mimi. No response from Mimi. The cameraman caught a hand-covered face. The TV hostess went on asking,
"Will you accept the marriage proposal?"
This unexpected question threw Mimi into a state of panic. She muttered.
"What? I don't know what you're talking about."
She was trying to escape from the crowd. The TV hostess immediately explained.
"Mr. Chen, we call him Ju Ji, just proposed to you publicly on the stage. Didn't he ask you before?"
Ju Ji just proposed to Emmy publicly on stage.
Mimi stressed the word "me," sounding full of surprise.
"You, or he, must be out of his mind. Please let me out, I need to go to the ladies' room."
At that moment I arrived. When Mimi saw me with a bouquet of flowers in my hand, she looked as though she had suddenly seen a ghost.
"Mimi, I propose to you in front of this crowd. Will you marry me?"
As soon as I ended my proposal, all Mimi said was,
"I met a ghost."
Then she collapsed. Then someone shouted, "Call an ambulance." I grabbed Mimi, put the violin on her, and ran away. Not far from the concert hall there was a taxi. We got in the car and I said to the driver,
"Hurry to the hospital."
"Which hospital?"
the driver asked.
"Any hospital, to the emergency room,"
I said. At this point, Mimi took over and said to me,
"You don't know which hospital emergency room?"
"Oh, you're all right, then good, great, then go to the high cadre ward."
I said, because if Mimi is fine, the priority is, of course, going to see my father for the last time.
"I'd rather go to the emergency room of Shanya Hospital first,"
Mimi suggested. After Mimi's explanation, I realized that it was not my father who was present at my concert, but my Uncle Ding. It was my aunt who returned home and gave my father's letter to Uncle Ding. Uncle Ding read my father's letter many times, and with my aunt working hard on him, Uncle Ding, who had vowed never to see my father, decided, finally, to go to Changsha. According to the words Uncle Ding, certain things needed to be sorted out clearly, face to face. Uncle Ding arrived in Changsha just before my concert. So, entrusted by his elder brother, my father, after briefly meeting, my Uncle Ding put on my father's clothes and hat, disguising as my father to attend the concert. It was at the very moment that my father left, my Uncle Ding suddenly felt sick and was carried to the emergency room of Xiangya Hospital. The poorest of all was my aunt, who lost both brothers at the same time, on the same day.